Hey, thank you for being here. Um, I am Dr. Deborah Fripp. I am the Executive Director of Teach the Shoah. We are here with Dr. Mehek Berza from the Ackerman Center. Mehek, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Lynn Feldman, the Director of Holocaust Scholarship from Teach the Shoah. Lynn, say hello.
Hi, good evening, good morning, depending where you are.
And we are very lucky to have Judy Weissenberg Cohen, a survivor from Canada, joining us to tell us about her story. Judy, can you take yourself off mute and say hello real quick?
Yes, you you want me to say no, Dr. Mehak is gonna talk about me.
Yes, I just wanted you to say hello.
Correct, right.
So we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen here. No, yeah, okay, that's okay. So this is sharing their stories, the story of Judy Weisenberg Cohen. This is the inaugural collaboration between Teach the Shoah and the Ackerman Center, and we are so excited to start this collaboration with Mehek and the Ackerman Center. A quick little bit about Teach the Shoah. We are an international nonprofit whose mission is to tell testimony-based stories, and through those testimony-based stories, build empathy and understanding and connection. We offer a number of different things. We train storytellers like Mehek. We bring them out into the world. We hold storytelling programs like this one. We hold Holocaust commemorations. You can find out all about us at our website, teachtheshoah.org. Mehek, you want to tell us a little bit about the Ackerman Center?
Sure, Dr. Fripp. So the Ackerman Center is a distinguished and publicly engaged academic center that offers an in-depth view of the Holocaust, genocide, and human rights studies within a dedicated facility. And here at the Ackerman Center, our mission is teaching the past, changing the future. And by advancing a continuous engagement with the past, the Ackerman Center is a vital part of promoting solutions to the challenges to global justice and peace in our world. And I have joined recently as the program director for online global initiatives. And I am happy and blessed to be a part of this wonderful center.
Thank you, Mehek. I also want to point out that Mehek has been a part of Teach the Shoah for quite some time, and she is actually a member of our board of directors, and we greatly appreciate everything that she does for us as well. Quick mention, we'll say something about this again later. We have Teach the Shoah has two more programs coming up in the next couple of days. In fact, in a couple of hours, we're going to have another program about Stories of Rescue that's going to be run by Lynn. And on Sunday, we have a program with YIVO about their new exhibition about Yitzhak Rudashevsky. I'll tell you about those again later. So before we get started, quick content reminder. I know you're all here for this purpose. These are Holocaust stories. They can be difficult to listen to. If at any time you feel the need to step out or step away, please do so. Please take care of yourself first and foremost. So I am now going to turn it over to Lynn to introduce Mehek and the story that Mehek is going to tell about Judy.
Thank you, Deborah. So Dr. Mehek Berza is a pioneer in Holocaust education in India. And as she mentioned before, she is currently the program coordinator for online global initiatives at the Ackerman Center for Holocaust Studies, University of Texas, Dallas. She received her PhD from Jamia University, New Delhi, India, and her dissertation examined gender responses to the Holocaust. She has acted as a scholar in residence at the University of Oxford, the head of Global Holocaust and Religion Studies at the Global Center of Religious Research, and an assistant professor of English at the University of Delhi, and she is a board member at Teach the Shoah and a storyteller. Mehek this evening will be telling us the story of Judy. Judy was born in Debrecen, Hungary in 1928. She was the youngest of 7 siblings. In June 1944, Judy and her family were deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau. There, she and her sisters were separated from their mother. Although Judy survived several camps and a death march, her parents, 4 siblings, and most of her extended family were murdered. She was liberated by the US Army in 1945. And in 1948, Judy immigrated to Montreal, where she met and married Sydney, and together they have 2 children. They moved to Toronto in 1961. After a personal encounter with a neo-Nazi Holocaust denier group in 1993, Judy became an activist in Holocaust education and anti-racism. She is the originator and chair of the Holocaust Center's permanent exhibition, We Who Survived. Judy is also the creator of the website Women and the Holocaust. Mehek, whenever you're ready, please begin.
I was unplanned, the 7th child in a family already crowded with 3 sons and 3 daughters. I was born on Monday, September 17, 1928. It was also the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. We lived in Debrecen, Hungary, in a Jewish area of the city, and our house was one of the 3 modest dwellings that centered around a courtyard. I remember being very mischievous in my childhood. I grew up in a very busy household full of siblings and constant activities of one kind or another, but little attention was paid to me. Some of the stories about my childhood I remember directly. Others I remember because they were told over and over again. Once, when I was 3 or 4 years old, I asked my mother for a few pennies because I wanted to go to the candy store and buy candy. It was laundry day, and my mother was busy supervising the 2 hired washerwomen who came to do the washing for our large family. My mother dismissed me without giving me the money. Guess what I did? When she wasn't looking, I lifted her wallet quietly out of her apron pocket and took the money myself. Mission accomplished. I didn't know what to do with the wallet once I had done the theft. So I hid it under one of the huge utensils that was used to boil the white clothing and bedding. Well, when it was time to pay the washerwomen, my mother couldn't find her wallet. Apparently, there was a big dispute in the house, but I remained quiet. At night, after the fire under the utensils went down and Mary, our helper, cleaned out the ashes, she found the metal snap that had been on my mother's wallet. Somehow, the evidence pointed towards me. And when I was asked, I admitted, amid tears, what I had done. The Jewish holidays were the highlight of her childhood years. I just loved Purim, a festive holiday that celebrates the deliverance of Jews from imminent doom at the hands of their enemies. For us kids, the fun part was the endless baking, the heavenly aroma of cinnamon, coca, nutmeg wafting through the house, and the anticipation of eating my mother's delicious baked goods. By the time I was 10 years old, I often accompanied my mother when she went shopping for live poultry at the market. When I think back, I realize that her shopping skills were uncanny. You know what she did? She would pick up a hen and blow into its feathers just to see the color of its skin. And she would teach me. See, she would say, it's yellow. This is an old hen, good only for chicken soup. There were probably days where I was angry at my older brothers or sisters, or when I was denied things I wanted badly. But all in all, I recall that my childhood was mostly pleasant. All my schooling took place in the Jewish schools, and I only had Jewish friends right through my school years, except for the non-Jewish neighborhood children that I played with. Our lives immediately and profoundly changed on March 19, 1944. Matters proceeded with lightning speed. All Jewish schools had to close down. My memories of that time are of constantly worried faces and whispered discussions among the adults around us. Shortly after, Jews were ordered to wear a yellow Star of David. I remember riding on the streetcar to visit the students I tutored. The yellow star was attached to my jacket, as it legally had to be. But I was mischievous, so I covered it with books and notes that I was holding. This was my little act of resistance. My father's barber of some 30 years offered us to hide all until the end of the war. But my naive father said no. What happens to all of the Jews will happen to us as well. End of argument. He was the sole decision maker. In May, the Debrecen ghetto was established in the area of the city where most of the Jews lived. It was terribly overcrowded. Young as I was, I sensed misery all around me. The women tried to make meals with meager supplies, but it was never enough. I worked as a volunteer helper in the makeshift hospital that was housed in what had been the Jewish high school. After 6 memorable and miserable weeks altogether in the ghetto, the deportation began. The Hungarian soldiers pushing and shoving people into the cattle cars. It is impossible to adequately describe the development of physical, emotional, psychological turmoil experienced in the cattle car. It just overflowed with 78 people. The elderly sat on the floor, a few on the bedding or small suitcases that they brought along. Mothers with infants or toddlers tried to find space. The young people, like my sisters and I, stood packed like a herring in the jar, perspiring profusely in the heat. Gone were those happy and carefree days with my youthful trials. At the end of our journey, tired, parched, we arrived in an indescribable place. Barbed wire, electrified fences, and SS soldiers with their trained dogs waiting on platform. All of them, man and the beast, barking constantly. This was Auschwitz. It was the most shocking and disorienting experience. It was beyond anything that we ever saw or could have imagined. After getting down from the cattle car, men and women were immediately separated. This was the last time I saw my parents. Mothers with children, visibly pregnant women, and all the elderly were sent to the left. Young women like me and my three sisters, who seemed fit enough to work, were sent to the right. We didn't know what either direction meant. We had to part in an instant, without a goodbye or a hug. And yet, I was lucky, for I had my three older sisters, Evie, Clary, and Bosky, with me. At least for a while, we could stay together. Bald and dressed in dirty rags, we were quite a sight. Bosky was always the practical one. You know what she did? She tore a large segment of material from the bottom of my nightgown. She tore the cloth into 4 long, narrow scarves to cover our heads. See? Instant magic. We felt a little less humiliated and a tiny bit more feminine. With hundreds of women in each barracks, we slept on the bare wooden floors, tightly packed in. If one person wanted to turn over, the entire row had to turn as well. Evie, Clary, and Bosky and I cried through that first night, all along with others. I cannot recall 4 of us fighting over anything. Mostly, we were worried. Our concern for each other withstood the most appalling and challenging conditions. We had no calendar, but I think it was a bit later, around August 1944, that there was a huge selection. Evie and Clary were selected and sent somewhere. We didn't know where. We cried bitter tears. Thankfully, Bosky and I were still together. She was my sole family now, my guardian angel. My sweet 16th birthday was spent in the shadows of gas chambers. Bosky gave me a hug and a kiss, and we celebrated the fact that at least we were alive and together. Sometime after, I became extremely ill with high fever. as fate would have it, while I was sick, there was another big selection. I don't know the exact date. I vaguely recall that I was selected to go with a group of prisoners. Now, I was alone. Along with others, I just dragged myself to another camp in the Auschwitz-Birkenau complex, the women's compound. We stayed there just for one night. To my great amazement and luck, I found two sisters whom I knew from my home city of Debrecen, Edith and Sari Feig. They suggested that the three of us should stick together. I felt so much safer, not being alone anymore. The next morning, we were all put in cattle cars again, and the entire group was taken to another camp, the Bergen-Belsen camp. From then on, Sari and Edith and I became inseparable camp sisters. Bergen-Belsen was a different game altogether. The three of us would put our blankets together and huddle under them to warm each other up. Again, we were idle, no work, nothing to do. Finally, we were transferred to wooden barracks, but food became more and more scarce. Early in January 1945, there was a big assembly. Prisoners from different sections of the camp were gathered together. The man who spoke to us needed 500 strong young women to work in his factory, an airplane parts factory called Junkers. My camp sisters and I saw that the conditions in the camp were worsening, and so we volunteered to go with him. We decided to present ourselves as three sisters, hoping that would allow us to stay together. I took on their surname and registered myself as Judy Feig, along with Sari Feig and Edith Feig. And we were accepted. This was the first time we had the opportunity to take our fate into our own hands. Finally, one day, the much-awaited attack came. After this attack, we had nowhere to go. And we feared what awaited us. So, we left the camp with a very meager food supply under the watchful eyes of guards and started marching on to the road to nowhere. The most bizarre memories of this march are from when we went through the towns. It was absolutely surreal. Just a few meters from us, we saw a normal life. The kind we still remembered, where children went to school, the adults went to work. People were happy. While we were marching, wrapped up in rags, filthy, dirty, starving. We often slept in a barn, and one morning we were awakened from our shallow sleep by a loud knock on the barn. Disoriented and startled, we quickly sat up. Someone opened the door, and there stood a tall man in the doorway, the sunshine behind him. He then said, "Young ladies, you are free." Wow, This was our liberation. No trumpets, no confetti, just three quiet, magnificent words. You are free. Within seconds, we decided that we would go to the American military officials, who were stunned and perplexed by our arrival and by the condition that we were in. Soon, the war was over, and we were registered as refugees. Each of us had to decide where to get on with our shattered lives. We had to look into our future and ask, where to, how to, why go on living at all? As Sari, Edith, and I discussed this, in the end, we thought our best bet was to go back to Hungary to find out who else was alive. Since we lived in different parts of the city, my camp sisters and I had to part ways. We cried and hugged. It was just difficult to say goodbye. As I finally turned to my street in my hometown, it seemed old, ugly, uninviting. But suddenly, you know what I saw? I saw two men walking towards me, and as we got closer, I recognized it was Lassie, the youngest of my three brothers. Wow, I was no longer alone. As we exchanged stories, we were emotionally heavy, and those were difficult days and weeks for me. The Jewish high school that I had once attended no longer existed. But continuing our education was important, and so I went back to school. I was going to turn 17, and it was a good distraction from wrestling with my agonizing memories and traumatic experiences. Later, I came to know that Evie, my elder sister, was also alive. For 2 weeks, she was pinching me just to make sure it wasn't a dream. But she then told me how Bosky and Clary did not survive. In the Bergen-Belsen displaced persons camp, the 3 surviving siblings of the Weissenberg family took stock of our enormous losses in the Holocaust. As the days and months passed slowly, the stark reality of our temporary situation stared us in the face. All 3 of us began thinking about our future. What next? The Canadian government finally opened its doors to immigrants. And with the government's permission, the Canadian Overseas Garment Commission representatives came to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp to test, select, and recruit a large group of us with sewing skills. My sister Evie passed with flying colors, as she was an experienced seamstress. I kind of managed too, but our brother Lassie, in spite of all the teaching and practice, he was silly enough to sit down at the back side of the sewing machine. No surprises. He flunked. But we were told that we could sponsor him to join us in Canada in 3 months. Indeed, that's what happened. Evie and I signed up to go to Canada. To leave the hated, blood-soaked Europe behind and have a chance to live in Canada was all that really mattered.
Mehak, may I give you some appreciations?
Sure.
I'll start off with I will never wash clothes again without thinking of that opening scene. I love that. Even the part afterwards with the holidays and the smell of the cinnamon taking over. The way you told this story made it visual, not only in sight, but also in senses. From the happy senses of the smell of cinnamon to the very dire senses of the experience of the camp. You have woven Judy's story in the most beautiful possible way. It has come through as almost as if we were watching a film, only listening to a film. With a bit of humor and with a bit of um, emotion, and it all came through so almost effortlessly. And that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lynn. That meant a lot to me, especially when Judy's here to see and witness this. I was so nervous.
I'm sure. And you're soon going to have the chance to talk a bit with Judy about this whole experience. But that actually leads me to my question to you, and that is, how did you weave this story? How did we come um, to bringing this finished, beautiful story to us this evening? And in the meantime, everybody, please, you're welcome to give appreciations to Mehak in the chat. Mehak, I'm going to spotlight you again for this, but please walk us through your process.
Sure. I just saw a question in the chat that has Judy written her experience down? Is there a book? Yes, that was where my story was coming from. And the book is called A Cry in Unison. So I came across the Israeli Memoirs Foundation, and I wanted to put up a presentation, and I wanted to submit my abstract. And the condition was that you could choose only from the memos listed in the foundation. And then I started my research, and I came across the women's website, and I came across the name Judy Weissenberg Cohen. And I came across the fact that she's alive. And I was in India at that time. And I ended up contacting her. And then she responds so beautifully. And she was so generous to allow me for a Zoom talk with her. And I went over her book and I talked about her experiences. And we had a couple of conversations over Zoom. So that's how the process got started. And then she also was very generous to let me handle her Instagram account, which is Women at the Holocaust. And then we just kept on connecting from there. And then I asked her permission that may I narrate your story in one of the storytelling sessions. And again, she was very, very generous and welcomed this idea. And that's how I ended up narrating her story. But it was so difficult for me to cull out these excerpts from the story. I didn't want to leave out anything, but then it would be an audiobook if I didn't leave out anything. So I really had difficult time, but then I'm so blessed. Every time I do this storytelling thing, I'm so blessed to have been mentored by now 3 mentors, Lynn, Jennifer, Violet. And I told Violet that I think I'm having the best of both worlds. And now it is the best of three worlds. So that's how it just came together.
Thank you. And we are the ones that are blessed this evening by listening to your story. So thank you so much for sharing. Deborah, I shall pass it over to you.
Actually, we're going to pass it back to Mehek. Lynn, would you spotlight Mehek and Judy? And Mehek, why don't you introduce us to Judy? It's very exciting to be able to have her here. Judy, take yourself off mute if you would. And we'll turn it over to the two of you to talk about how this felt from Judy's perspective.
Yes.
Hi. Well, Mehak, you did a beautiful job
Thank you, Judy.
reading my story. And that reminded me as that so many people asked me after I finished the book, and it was edited beautifully by the editor at the Azraeli Foundation. Um, how did I remember all these things? After all, I was only 16 years old at the end of this ordeal. And you know, my answer was then, and it is, that I surprised myself how much I remembered as a child about my mother, who was the busiest housewife that probably I could imagine. But in those days, all housewives were like this. You know, she had to feed a family of 9 people 3 times a day. So that alone makes her a heroine to do that. Of course, she did it with a lot of love and forethought, but she had help. Nevertheless, the women of those days, as I was thinking back and slowly talked about the Jewish holidays and everything that entailed a lot of work, how did they manage? But then slowly, that led me also to talk about women and the Holocaust. But that came suddenly when my daughter presented me one of Mother's Days. A new book came out, at least in the United States, called Different Voices. The first book that started, every chapter was written by the survivor, already a professional or a survivor. And I became aware or jogged my memory of actually being in Augsburg and myself. And so somehow one thing led to another, and it seemed that I had a lot in my subconscious, to remember my past. And of course, post-Holocaust, of course, was natural, I would remember. So I was a surprise to myself, how I brought the whole thing together. But there was no sense for me to do anything else but just, Judy, write what you remember. What was really your life as the 7th child in a very busy household? And I was precocious, I gave my mother a lot of headaches, yeah, and everything. So you did a beautiful job. Um, Circumstances are sometimes also guide you, because when I wrote this book, my husband was dying of Alzheimer's for 16 years. I had very, very lone years when I looked after him. And writing this story filled the void when I would go home all alone, and needless to say, I was always thinking about something. That why not write down that my family once existed, and in the community existed in the city of Debrecen, and just give just a little bit of picture what it was like. And I everything came together, helping me to overcome the difficulties I was experiencing myself at that time, and feel good about it that since You know, 75% of Hungarian Jews went straight to the gas chamber. They had not even a name that they existed. That at least I could do something to say, yes, they existed, and they all belong to me. And then it gave me, maybe very selfish, good feeling that, well, maybe I did something good, not so much historically, but at least personally. And that's how the whole thing developed. So it may not be a big literary achievement, but it's all honest and nitty-gritty of daily life, you know, in the good times and the transition and then the terrible times. And that's how it happened in my memory. And I am pretty close to the reality. Too bad that when I started writing it, already my siblings were dead. Those who survived died of cancer. So I had nobody to sort of try it out. Am I remembering properly? But I think I do, and do and did, and I'm glad finally I did it, and I love it. And in your hands, you know, of the way you read it, and you took out, you know, very important parts that shows that nitty-gritty daily life. Thank you, Mehak.
It's my honor and pleasure, Judy. You were so generous because I still remember I had a lot of questions for Judy for our first conversation. And I was like, okay, should I ask you those questions? And she was like, no, you can email them. And when we had our first Zoom conversation, she was ready with her set of answers. And I was like, wow. And the conversation I thought should last like around 40 minutes because I didn't want to bother her so much. But I remember, and I still have it. It went on for like 4 hours.
Yeah, well, you know, I had one motivating factor, I must say. Usually, Holocaust history forgets about it, but what happened when the Hungarian transport arrived to Auschwitz-Birkenau? The two guys who were the prisoners who helped us to get out of the cattle car in a very rude way. But one of them, and I mentioned that in my memoir too, one of them was whispering to the women who were holding babies or children's little hands and kept them very, very quietly. Give the children to the grandmothers, kept repeating it. As it turned out, as the terrible story of the Holocaust was, that it was a policy that they knew, these prisoners knew, that right away they are going to go to the gas chamber. The grandmothers who were old, 40 and older, and all the children will go. Any woman who is holding a child, a hand of a child, is destined to die with a child. But that came on later on, how these guys wanted to save the young mothers. If you didn't hold a child, then you passed. So that stuck in my head for some reason as a young child. And it turned out, some very conscientious research took place eventually, that why these guys were saving lives. And for some reason, the major Holocaust history doesn't want to mention them, the Canada Commando. That's how they were called. So that already gave me something, that something is about women, something is about mothers, and a lot of murder, mothers with their children. So there was already this seed that already made me think and develop later on in a better way. You never know, so all of my survivor is the way another survivor put it, by chance alone. You know, I just was lucky being at the right place at the right time. And, you know, volunteering for that job in a Junkers aeroplane factory again was, we didn't know what we volunteered for. We knew Bergen-Belsen became a terrible concentration camp, you know, with all the typhus epidemic. It was just a feeling, you know, and we made a right decision. What can we do? It was a pretty, as far as Nazi camps go, it was pretty good, the labor camp, for a few weeks till the end of April, I think. So all somehow came together by chance. That's all I can say as far as my own personal experience. And the fact that I was selected to be guest with another, quite a few people in Auschwitz-Birkenau, we don't know why we weren't. We heard the rumors that often by that time, end of 1944, they ran out of Zyklon B gas. Some days when they wanted to burn people in the gas chamber, they didn't have gas. It was Sherlock, or assigned to whatever you want. You know, to some people it was God, to some people it was by chance alone. And here I am, getting nearer to 97, and God only knows how I'm doing it, but I am here to tell, witnessing, and also witnessing the way the world turned again, a very hazardous place to be. How many times can one witness something? Anyways, thank you very much, Mehak. Really, I think you made my book. But I was determined to also not just write about myself, but about what happened to the women. By that time, a lot of research was taking place, and books came out. And I think my website on the internet was the first one on women and the Holocaust. The internet itself was in its infancy at the time when I started to put it together in the late 1990s. And finally, in 2000, it appeared. So one thing, but I was determined that has to be part of my book, not just myself. And that's what happened. And you picked it up. I was lucky that you picked it up. And you were interested in, and you also had similar tendencies, you know, to delve into what happened to the women, and particularly also Jewish women. So there is one book at least that deals with it. Very few of us survivors became feminists, let me tell you.
That's,
you know,
Judy, thank you so much. There's a couple of questions in the chat that I would like to pass to you.
Okay.
Somebody asked, did you talk about your experiences to your children, or did you avoid talking about those until later?
Well, thank you for this question. I married, when I married, I didn't marry another survivor. My husband was a Canadian, born and bred. Even his parents were already born in Canada. So that prevented me talking too much about it. Usually the experience was if both your parents were survivors, the children heard a great deal about it all the time, or nothing at all. Parents couldn't be right, you know. Either they were too silent, or they were too verbose, you know, talk about it. So you ask the second, third generations, and you get a very varied answer to this. How do they feel? My children, well, because I didn't talk about it much. Actually, the first time I raised it with my two children was after a Passover dinner. We talked about freedom. And somehow I brought the two together, my personal experience. I didn't go into the gory details. Everybody loved the gory details of campuses. I didn't go for it. And my husband couldn't share in it, so it was a very low key. But my daughter did cut on actually she got with that book, Different Voices. She wrote her master's thesis on something connected with women in the Holocaust. So now my son, no, he didn't seem to take too much to the Holocaust issues, and I respected that. So
Were they surprised when you told them about it after that Passover? Were they surprised, or did they basically know that a little bit about it?
Well, they learn a little bit about it in school. It's I try to do it at age appropriate.
Mm.
This was very important. And why should I make them feel always afraid of being Jewish? Why should I make them feel always as a victim? Because as time went on, and I had a good and happy life with my husband, I started to feel less and less as a victim as the decades went by. After all, I was immersed integrated into a normal, happy life, family life. So I don't believe being an eternal victim. And I didn't want to pass that on to my children. And they weren't that interested. And that's basically what it boiled down to. That was the natural flow in our family.
I have a question actually. When you went to Canada with your sister and you left your brother behind, even for a couple of months, was that hard? That seems like that would have been hard to leave him behind again.
Not really, because he worked for the UNRWA. I don't know if you know what the UNRWA was, the United Nations Refugee Organization, and the co-workers there assured us, my sister and I, don't worry, just go. Once you're there, after 3 months, there's a good chance that he'll go to, not as a garment worker, but some other worker, and that's actually what happened. So it was already peacetime, so-called, and we weren't afraid anymore that each separation actually has to mean death or permanent division between us. No, we believed in it, and he came, and we reunited the three of us out of the 7 kids. 3 of us who survived, but he died natural death here in Canada.
That's
Remained
interesting.
alone of the big family. But I found working in the garment industry, if you ever read my book, it was an important experience for me. Start out without any skill to be part of a blue-collar worker and the daily hassle, learning how to fight for better wages. That came to me quite naturally eventually, and how so many aspects, because we were always asked, where did you get your resilience? The resilience, this word became a catchword. I said, we had no choice. Either that or you die. The resilience was a natural need. If I wanted to eat and pay rent and whatnot, you just had to buckle down and learn something to make money with. that will feed you. So it was sheer necessity that forced us to become so-called resilient. This is at least a personal experience. And, but besides that, something that we brought home from home, that education is important. So while I learned English and French, I also went to take a course in bookkeeping and switching from eventually from making dresses, I couldn't make a living with it, but I had to, and switch to office work eventually. So there were many things we were working that sort of showed us the way how to overcome a lot of bad things and how to just start looking forward to what was the necessity of the day.
Thank you. We have one final question from Violet, who I should have introduced earlier. Violet is our executive vice president and one of our coaches, who coached Mehek on her story. Violet, come off mute and say hi real quick.
Hello. It is so wonderful to meet you, Judy. And Mehek, I am so impressed. Thank you so much. And I love what you're wearing. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Thank you, Violet.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Violet asked Judy, did your children know your siblings? Their aunt and their uncle. Did your children know their aunt and their uncle? And did their aunt and their uncle ever tell them their stories? Did your sister and brother ever tell their stories?
Are you asking me?
Yes. Yes. Did your children know
my children?
Sister and
Well, my children knew my sister and my brother who survived.
Yes.
Yes, they come and visited us a lot when we moved to Toronto from Montreal. Yeah, definitely they had a relationship. Yes, unfortunately they, as I said, that on my husband's side, his mother died when my daughter was 6 years old. So they have grandparents, so to speak. Really, that was really missing them. It was very important as I came to realize with the passing of decades how important grandparents, the role grandparents played in children's lives. Well, my children missed out on that, but they had one uncle and one aunt, and the relationship was good until unfortunately they passed away. So we had a little bit of everything.
That they were lucky, I guess. Judy, thank you so much. Mehek, wonderfully done. We're going to wrap up. Let me put the screen share back up. Just really quickly to, this is the Teach the Showa team. I want to thank everybody who's part of the team, especially our featured storyteller tonight, Dr. Mehek Bursa. We are 100 storytellers and counting. If you are interested in being part of our storytelling, please get in touch with us. We run classes regularly. As I said, we have these two programs coming up. Lynn, could you throw the registration for these two in the chat? The first is coming up in like 4 hours, I guess. This evening, 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And then the second of these is coming up on Sunday. Please stay in touch with us. This is our contact information. And thank you so very much for joining us. And again, thank you, Judy, for participating, for allowing us to do this. And thank you, Mehek, for your wonderful storytelling.
Thank you for having me. And you see some pictures behind me. Those are the one, my family, who were murdered.
Oh,
And
wow.
they're with me all the time, every day. Every day is a Shoah day.
I'm
And
going to take off the
thank you for
spotlight.
having me. And if it means anything to anybody nowadays, different generations, 3, 4 generations later, hopefully, if they can learn something from it, at least one thing is very important that come out from from this genocide, from the Holocaust, is the measure of hate. The measure of hate, no matter which ideology creates it, which political ideology creates the hate, the impact of it, especially the mass hatred, irrational mass hatred unleashed on particular group of people, is an eternal truth. It is true today. It is true. It was true then. Then the mass hysteria uh, brought on by irrational hatred, usually usually comes from political decisions, not just, but also racial discrimination. That is true forever. That was true during the Holocaust, and we have to watch it today too. Where does all that hate comes from, and where does it lead to? Children have to be taught the difference, know, and how to think about it when they vote, when they endorse certain concepts without thinking, just because my friend is doing it. I know that the social media changed everything, even since I became a public speaker. How much you have to fight social media with the truth, with the historical truth, because so much fake comes through, and those kids don't know what to believe. The impact of it is enormous, and we're still fighting the effect, the ill effect of the many different social medias. I wanted to bring this out, that
Thank
it's
you.
it's quite a fight. It's a
Yes, thank you,
complicated
Judy.
world.
I think we will let you have the last word there. That is the word, and that is why we do this, and that is why we thank you for allowing us to bring your story to more people and to bring this out, because for exactly that
Right,
reason. So
exactly.
so thank you, everybody, and thank you so much for being here. And I suppose I shouldn't say good night. Have a good afternoon, and we will wrap up there.